They said the hollow was a place where the light got thin. You could stand in a pool of noon and feel it slip from your skin, like someone had taken color with them. Find somewhere dark and quiet. Put your headphones on. Listen closely now. Tonight's story is called The Hollow of Borrowed Shadows.
Dusk draped itself over the valley. The trail smelled of crushed fern and wet stone. Footsteps came on the lip of the gully, soft, careful, and then there was the sound of a shadow sliding against rock, a slick little scrape that didn't belong to any foot. A man woke on the path with a name on his lips that wasn't his. He said, Marin. The name tasted foreign in his mouth, like a borrowed coin. If you were there, you would have noticed the way the light fell wrong, long and lazy, then suddenly sharp, as if it had been plucked from the world and folded. That was the moment Mara called the park station and said, I found someone who carries someone else.
Mara had been a ranger for 8 years. She liked the order of maps and radio checks, the small domesticated duties that made a wilderness tolerable. She wanted a quiet life, a rented cabin, coffee that never burned, hikers who turned back before dark. The hollow was the valley on the far side of the ridge, a place locals avoided in summer when the light thinned and in winter when the snow swallowed sound. The town's rhythms were small, post office arguments over a mailbox that never quite closed, a diner where pies cooled at the window, neighbors who borrowed ladders and secrets. Mara liked that the world could be counted on. She liked knowing where the borders were. But one evening, she found a man sitting on the trail with dirt in his hair and no shadow beneath him.
He said he couldn't remember the day before. He could tell me his job, his brother's birthday, little factual things, but when I asked him his name, he said it wrong. He smiled when someone else told a joke that mirrored a joke we keep in town, and the laugh fit like a coat someone else had left on a peg. His watch had stopped at dusk. His footprints didn't line up with the mud smear beside them. I told myself it was exposure, hypoxia, stress. But even stress leaves a shadow. This did not.
At first they rationalized. It's the angle of the sun, the rock's texture. Mara ran tests the way a ranger runs tests. Different times, mirrors, overhead lights in the station. Once, she stood a man under the porch light and watched his outline refuse to form on the boards. Once, 2 neighbors argued about which of them had last seen a particular pattern on their child's face, and one of them was sure it had been Wednesday when it was Sunday. Small things at first. Misremembered recipes, a neighbor calling his wife by the name of the previous owner of their house. Then the patterns spread. Phrases slipping into mouths that didn't belong to the speaker. Little gestures showing up like thrifted clothing. It felt like a theft without breaking, an erasure with a soft glove.
The old women called it a bargain the valley makes. You don't take its rivers or cut its trees without leaving something. People laugh at that, but you know when you stand in the hollow that it listens. They say shadows are cheap. You think you own yours. Turns out they can wander off and come back with a piece of someone else.
Reports piled up. People returning from day hikes with habits that weren't theirs. A mailbox full of letters addressed to the wrong first names. A woman who woke humming a lullaby she'd never heard. A local ledger from 50 years earlier mentioned light bargaining and a funeral shrouded in dusk. Mara began to notice a rhythm to the losses. Dusk, the hour after the sun dissolved at the ridge. The hollow didn't take in a single violent strike. It slipped and swapped. It stole a syllable here, a memory there, an annoying habit that belonged to someone else. The town divided between those who called it superstition and those who admitted that their neighbor's laugh had changed and that their father now used a phrase he never used before. People began to check each other, to ask what they had been like last summer, a kind of neighborly inventory that felt dangerous to keep.
One evening, Mara followed a flicker, not a flame, but a line of darkness moving along the gullies like a slow animal. It slithered close to the trunks, peeled itself off a man walking ahead, and slid along the rock with a sound like wet cloth. Mara stayed. She parked her truck on the ridge and sat with a thermos and a tape recorder, deciding curiosity was worth the risk. She watched as shadows detached and met the hollow, as if return with something clasped in their fingers. She watched until the air felt thick and her radio hummed like a trapped insect. This is where she chose not to leave.
The dusk came, and the hollow opened. Shadows unhooked themselves, small at first, like child's cutouts, then longer, moving with intention. They pooled in a dry rock basin and pressed together in a way that suggested trade. One shadow brushed another, and a face in the basin turned toward Mara with the echo of a name it had taken. The movement was deliberate, almost polite. Then one reached out like a hand and touched Mara's boot. The contact was colder than anything she had expected. Her breath hitched. For a second, she felt the memory of a river she'd never seen, the tilt of a house she'd never lived in. She tried to step back and found part of a childhood habit, the way she used to whistle when nervous, locked somewhere else. Do you feel that? This is the moment the story changes.
When it touched me, I didn't lose a scream or a name. I lost a small thing, my inclination to check a second time that the gate was latched. Ridiculous, almost, until I realized I had stopped double-checking. I was missing a tiny caution, the way a pocket can be empty. That night, I found a note in my own handwriting that read, "Check latch." I didn't remember writing it. I kept the note anyway. I began to catalog what returned with people, a phrase, a preference, a taste for sweet coffee. The hollow dealt in small betrayals. It didn't kill, it unstitched.
After that night, the town quieted in a new way. People stopped leaving doors open. Parents watched their children count shadows during clay. Some dismissed Mars logs as wildlife misinterpretation. Others came to her with quiet confessions. A grandfather who no longer remembered his wife's favorite song. A baker who woke with the urge to salt bread with a recipe he'd never used. The emotional cost was diffuse. No bodies, no headlines, just small holes where a mannerism or memory used to be. The police took notes. A few scientists visited with equipment and left puzzled. Mara's reports circulated like a rumor that refused to be just a rumor.
Months later, in a living room lit by a single lamp, a child pointed across the room and shouted at their own shadow. "That's not me," the child said. The voice had the blunt certainty of a child. The shadow tilted like an answer, and then moved slightly away from the child's feet, as if displeased at being recognized. At home, people began sleeping with lights on and checking closets twice. And sometimes, late, at 3:17 a.m., a sound threaded through the quiet, an odd little knock that seemed to come from the space between things. It returns in the dark, soft as a borrowed cough.
If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who listens in the dark. Subscribe so you never miss an episode. Tell us your own Stranger of the Wild moments at our inbox. We collect them like careful evidence. If you're still here, it means the story followed you to the end. Take a breath. Look around your room. Make sure everything is exactly where you left it. I'm Sam Naing. If this episode stayed with you, share it with someone who listens in the dark like you do. Until next time.